We all know that attracting and retaining great staff is an ongoing challenge for the dairy sector. Well, a group of Canterbury dairy farmers have put their heads together and come up with one solution to the problem. They've set up a training program to attract young university graduates into dairying, fast-track them in their careers, and give them the skills and support to succeed. Each graduate is matched with a reputable farmer, paid a competitive salary, and paid to attend 25 modules covering everything from pasture management skills to banking basics. This year's pilot program has gone brilliantly, and here to tell us all about it are Campbell Tait, one of the farmers who's helped to set up this program, and Peter O'Connor, one of the graduates taking part. My name's Ben Chapman-Smith, and I hope you enjoy episode 36 of Talking Dairy. Peter and Campbell, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. I really appreciate you giving up your time. Peter, many listeners will know you as this year's Dairy Trainee of the Year winner in the Dairy Industry Awards. But for people who aren't familiar with you, tell us where you're working, what your role is this season, and how you got into dairy farming.
Yeah, g'day. Thanks for having me. So my role this season is farm manager on a 400 cow farm 10 minutes out of Methven, so on the Canterbury Plains. Yeah, I got into this from, my employer, I was with him last season, he's taking this farm over, so sort of a natural step to go into the position that I got offered. It's a bit of a step up from where I was last season as a 2IC. I grew up on a dairy farm, so I've always been surrounded by it. Mum and Dad still do the day-to-day on our dairy farm at home at Westport on the coast there, so always been right into it. And went to boarding school, always wanted to go back and work on the dairy farm in the holidays, and then went to Lincoln University and did a bit of tractor driving after that, and then went back to dairy farming.
Good stuff, thanks Peter. And Campbell, we'll get into talking about the graduate program in a moment, but tell us a bit about yourself too, please.
So unlike Peter, I grew up in a sheep farming family, and I guess my childhood memories, thinking of outside of school, it was always on the farm helping my folks. Yeah, holidays, sheep farming. We had beef as well, and a bit of dairy support. We also had a pit fruit and stone fruit orchard. So there was always lots of people coming and going. As things sort of progressed, we consolidated into basically just a sheep farming business. And at that time, I was heading to Lincoln with a BCom Ag in farm management, rural valuation. And then I used that actually for a bit. Instead of going straight into farming, I actually became registered as a valuer based down in Central Otago, mainly doing high country valuation work, but it expanded into everything from horticulture, viticulture, lifestyle, but mostly just rural valuation work. And it was probably during that time that I sort of firmed up in my mind that I was keen to get into farming. And so that sort of was when I set on the course of planning how we could transition at home to dairy, begin a dairy conversion, get the family on board. And I guess, the rest is history. It's now 11 years dairying for me here on the home farm.
And Campbell, the Grassroots Dairy Management Graduate Program, tell us what it is, when it started and why. Like, what's the problem that you're trying to solve through it, or the opportunity that you're trying to create?
So it's something that several farmers have talked about for quite a while. We recognise that it's hard to get the amount of, training and development and wraparound support for young people entering the industry. When you compare what the dairy industry does or has done relative to, say, some other industries, like take banking, for example, where there are typically large organisations that have got the resources and the horsepower to provide some great wraparound support for these young people coming out of university. That's something that we generally have struggled to do well in dairying as an industry. There'll be no doubt some really good farmers who are doing it. But it's something that I remember thinking when I finished up at university that it just didn't attract me to dairy. I couldn't feel the right people there to support you in your journey when you launched into your first job. And so that's what I had that experience of going into valuation, but I know that were other people going into banking or fertilizer companies where they would get a really good package and the opportunity to learn and progress. They could sort of see that in the next few years, but I guess the difference being that in those industries, you kind of get to a point in time where you can't necessarily grow much more. But in farming, and especially in dairy farming, you can actually progress much, much further if you connect yourself well with the right people. So that's kind of where the feeling, I guess, that several of us have had when we left university, and we recognised an opportunity to try and change that and get good employers initially to try and create and facilitate a program that really supports young people that are going through university transitioning into the dairy industry and making it a really good experience for them. So that's sort of where it starts from.
Do you think that we might have lost graduates who have come into the sector and because they haven't had that support around them that they might have left?
Yeah, I do. I think there's been some really good people who have probably been lost to the industry. They may have entered it and then thought, no, this is not for me. Had a bad experience. Actually, I don't want to do this. Or perhaps just didn't go down that path in the first instance because they weren't able to connect with the right type of employer who was keen to provide that support. Because you can imagine being a graduate, you've got a whole lot of options in front of you, but if it's not necessarily good employers that are right there at the right time and say they don't have an opportunity for you, well, are you going to keep looking to find that right employer, or do you sort of take what's on the table at the time? And so I guess that's where we want to make that change, where employers are right there through your second and third years at university, right in front of you saying, hey, no, there is a really good opportunity to go dairy farming, and here's a group of really good employers who are keen to provide the same sort of support that you could get, or hopefully better opportunities by going dairy farming.
So when did you launch the program, Campbell?
So we're really just coming toward the end of our first year of the program. We've been talking about it for a couple of years, but essentially it was wintertime last year that we really launched it and began our push to get graduates for that first intake that began the program in February this year.
Talk to us about the numbers of farmers and graduates who have been involved in, you'd call it a pilot, correct?
We do, yeah. It very much has been a pilot, and we as farmers, employers, are really learning as we go. Sometimes we've had to make a few things up with really short notice, but basically we've now got a model for how the program would run. And so we've got 5 graduates on our first year, and essentially we're hoping to expand that out. We've got quite a network of employers beyond just those that we have for our current graduates. And a lot of those are in a network where we know each other reasonably well because of how small the industry is. And those employers are very much the sort that you can just call on, and they're only too willing to help because they can see the value in the program, and that by being connected to it, that there's a real opportunity for them to secure a really good grad in the future too.
When I first heard about the program and was reading about it, I assumed that it was for ag graduates, but that's not the case, is it?
No, it's not. It really is open to a wider pool than just ag graduates. Admittedly, they are pretty key targets because people who have made their mind up that they want to go to Lincoln or Massey and study ag have already sort of set themselves on that pathway, and so they're easier to convince. But anyone who's got a science degree or even engineering, or perhaps even they've thought, yeah, I want to go and study law or economics, and then realise actually this is not for me, I think I'd rather be out on the land, they still can demonstrate that they are keen to learn and they want good support from an employer. So no, we're absolutely open to anyone that shows the right skills and attitude.
Which is a good time to bring you in, Peter. You're one of the 5 graduates who's been taking part this year. How did you hear about it, and why were you interested in taking part?
So I got contacted through a friend at university that is a graduate at ANZ Bank, and his boss was one of the people that created the program, and he said, I think this would fit you quite well. And I'd sort of seen a few of the advertisements and stuff for it, but hadn't quite thought it was like for me. But spoke to Mark, who was from ANZ, and he put me in touch with Tony, who was also helping organise it, and that sort of set the wheels in motion, I guess, and really thought that this would be a great thing to do. My employer at the time, well, it's still my employer, he sort of wasn't part of the initial group that created it, but I talked to him about it, and he was really keen for me to be on board, and so that was that. And I just thought it was a great opportunity to learn more skills, and any opportunity you get to do that, I think it's silly to turn it down, because the more you know, the better, and the more connections you make in this industry, it's amazing where you can go from there.
Do you think it's helped you move forward in your career, and do you see more career opportunities ahead as a result of the experience?
Yeah, I definitely think the connections that I've made during the course of the program so far, I haven't needed to call on them yet, but I think it's great to know that in the years to come, I've already made that connection and started that relationship. So knowing those people and having their cell phone numbers to be able to call them up and talk with them and discuss things if I need to, that's really put me in good stead, I think. And, if I need to go to the bank and get some money, I've created that relationship from our banking day, and I think that'll, those opportunities there will hold me in good stead for the future, and met other farmers that may have, job opportunities in the future when I start looking for my next move. You never know what those connections that you make, you never know where that's going to go.
I was wondering if there are any particular areas that might have been weaknesses for you, which you have really worked on and that you've become strong in.
I wouldn't have said that I would have identified them as weak points, but I think that the people management side of my skill set, I hadn't really needed to do much with it. Being a 2IC last year, I still had my employer above me, and he took care of a lot of that, and he was there day to day to help run the team, where now I'm managing the farm here, and I have a person under me where my employer's, he's not here that much. He's only a phone call away, but I'm the day-to-day running of the farm. So the people management side of things, I think that's held me in good stead to approach situations when they arise, to set standards and keep standards high, and what to do when, if the standard starts slipping, how to approach that and how to keep it, how to get it better, how to get it back up to where it needs to be and hold it there. So I think I wouldn't have necessarily identified it as something. I knew I didn't have much experience, but being on the program is definitely, the few people management sessions we've had have definitely helped sort of paint a clear picture of how I need to approach situations in that field.
I understand, are there about 25 modules? How often do they take place? How often are you heading off the farm to those? Where, and what are some of the topics?
So we've done, I think it works out to about 3 Wednesday afternoons a month. We had a break over calving when it's obviously busy, and I think we might have picked up a few in the winter when it wasn't so busy on the farm. So they start at 1:30 in the afternoon and run till 4:30, and then us graduates generally go and have a drink afterwards, which is a great part of it as well. The social side of it's awesome as well. So Wednesday afternoons, and some of the topics we've covered of, as I discussed, people and people management. I've found that great. I've had presentations from Fonterra talking about the cooperative structure and how that's a benefit to the New Zealand dairy industry. LIC have talked to us about using Minder and how the numbers behind cows get made up for BWs and PWs, that sort of thing. Had the module at ANZ Bank, so that was talking about the financial side of going contract milking and looking at the position you need to be in and how to approach a bank with, if you need funding. We went and saw Charlotte Glass at AgriMagic talking about environmental issues and opportunities. So that was really good. It's something that if you don't get off farm and go and talk to these people and see what they're doing, then you just don't know about it. So it's been great to be exposed to that sort of thing that's probably going on behind the scenes that we should know about it, but just don't get exposed to it. And then sort of other more day-to-day relevant things. We've had animal health session at Selden Require Vets, pasture management session that was at one of the farmers that's involved, and we've also had various farmers talk about how they've got to where they are, which has been great to see their pathway, and they're all so varied. So I think it really opened our eyes, I suppose, to there's not one set way of getting to farm ownership if that's your goal, or share milking, or wherever. There's many people have done it hugely different ways, so that's been really enjoyable to see all those.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. Campbell, you guys must have done a lot of work to put this, this in place, organise all of those different training modules and everything.
Yeah, well, we have, but yes, it becomes, after 10, 12 years of farming and probably learning a lot of these things over that period of time and getting to know a lot of people, all of a sudden you have all the context and a fair bit of that knowledge. If you're the sort of person, that's keen to go out there and learn and connect, it actually becomes easier for us to regurgitate that. We're in a privileged position where we have created a lot of networks and knowledge, and it's being able to impart that on these grads when they're starting out, so that they've got a really clear picture of what they could do in this industry if they really are keen to commit to it. So yes, it has been a lot of work, but it's enjoyable too. I love doing this. I used to host third year farm management students from Lincoln on our farm every year, and I always enjoyed that day of them coming out and seeing what we were doing, and I guess the opportunity to share with them what was happening and what they could do if they went farming. It's just being in that situation where you can share knowledge and just continue to expand your networks. So it's a win-win actually for both us as employers and the grads.
How does it work in terms of the employment agreements, accommodation, pay, etc.?
Yeah, so for each of the graduates, it's still a specific employment agreement with that employer who they are matched up with. So there's not a general sort of employment agreement. Each person has their own personalised agreement. And so that will come down to a range of factors. What we do have, though, is the ability to provide guidance to the employers to ensure that they do meet what we consider to be the minimum thresholds. So it's dependent on the position that the employee starts out at. Some graduates will have a greater level of experience than others, and so therefore they will start out at a higher or lower pay rate. It is expected that all graduates will be provided with accommodation on farm, and that too will differ depending on what that employer can provide. So it may be shared accommodation or it might be individual. Just depends on the circumstances with that farm. But the benefit is there that the graduate won't need to rent in town and travel to the place of work. That will be provided by the employer.
I understand DairyNZ supported the program somehow. How?
So DairyNZ has helped in a number of ways. Firstly, they've provided support in facilitating modules for us. So, of course, DairyNZ's got a large amount of resources there, both online information, but also people on the ground. And so we've been able to leverage there to get some support to facilitate some modules. But they've also been able to help by providing information that is relevant to particular modules as well. So documentation, it's all freely available on the website, of course, but it's just being able to tap into that. DairyNZ has also helped with some funding this year to help in a startup capacity to just meet some of those costs where in any sort of pilot program we needed some support to help with funding.
Campbell, it sounds like the pilot has been really successful. I'm wondering what's next. What's your vision for it in 2023?
Yeah, it has been a real success. There's been a lot of interest from both grads and also employers. Our hope is that next year we will increase it to close to 10 grads in the group. We currently have 7 that are signed up, so there's room for 1 or 2 more there. If we do get quite a few more, we may need to look at expanding into 2 groups within Canterbury. And at this stage, we're only providing the program in the Canterbury region, but there is work underway to look at expanding it further and wider. We've had a couple of people interested in the program, but not apply because it wasn't available where they wanted to undertake it. So we know that we could expand it if we had the right people and the right systems in place to run it around the rest of the country. There's certainly interest from DairyNZ and industry to have it across the whole country. But at this stage, we're careful in managing the quality, both from employers and the grads coming through, so that we achieve the objectives of the program.
Peter, if any potential grads are listening to this, or if somebody's, knows somebody that might be interested and they're wondering if they should give it a crack, what would you say to them?
Oh, I'd definitely advocate for it and tell them to give it a go. I think, the connections you make, money can't buy those. You have to be in front of someone to make that connection, and this grad program puts you in front of a lot of people that are high up in the industry, and you got to embrace the opportunity to make the connections and be in that position. And obviously the learning side of it as well, with all the content. It's a lot of management stuff that this program targets. You don't actually learn until you are a manager, and I think that's one of the objectives of this is to give you the skills that you need potentially before you need them, but once you are aware of what you need to do, then you actually start looking for it when you're in a lower role and working out, how you could have done that or what you could have done differently. Where before, if you weren't exposed to those, then you wouldn't be thinking about that. So I think giving you that next step of learning before you need it is really good. And yeah, it's a great way to meet people, and us 5 grads that are on it this year, great mates, and I'm sure we'll be good friends, well into the future. And if any of us have questions on the day to day, we just send a Snapchat to each other, and, it's answered very soon usually. So, it's a great network to have, and any opportunity to learn while you're on farm and get off farm at the same time as well, you've got to make the most of it. So.
That's awesome. Hey, and Campbell, just for people who want to find out more about it, or get in touch with somebody, maybe express their interest, where should they go?
Yeah, so the best place to go is to our website, which is dairygrads.co.nz, and they can learn about what the program entails if they haven't already learnt from this podcast. But if they go there, both employers and potential grads, they can get in contact with us. Email addresses on there. That's the best way to get in touch with us.
Good stuff, guys. A great chat. Thanks so much for your time, and good luck with the program.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for tuning in to Talking Dairy. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to check out more of our podcasts, go to dairynz.co.nz/podcast or find us on your favourite podcast platforms. Catch you next time.